All right, and so we're back as we finish off discussing. Roman Reigns retains, and it seems like that's the end of the show. He's celebrating. I can't remember if he celebrated over Cena or not. I can't remember. But he's celebrating. I think we're closing out the show. But we're not.
My.
Brock Lesnar's music hit.
What?
And he comes out, and man, is this not the Brock Lesnar that we saw when he left. He has a pony, like not really a pony, but his hair is slicked back and then tied into a short little ponytail, essentially. And he has a full-on beard.
Right.
He somehow looks bigger than when he left. And he confronts Roman, and it's funny, the highlights of this return wasn't even him confronting Roman. It was seeing Paul Heyman acting like he just he got caught cheating on Brock Lesnar, because he's like all like, oh no, and then Brock's looking at him and he's just like no, and he even like runs out the ring when Brock tries to step up to him before Roman gets in the way.
Yeah, I think a highlight of the return, because I've seen the video, is smiley Brock Lesnar high-fiving fans. What's happening? What multiverse have I stumbled into?
Yeah, I couldn't believe it. Like, I saw like the after video where like he beats up Cena, which is like, well, how is he supposed to be a face if he's beating up Cena? But then he walks out and he's like high-fiving everyone. He's smiling. I'm like, wow. For years we speculated what heel Reigns versus face Lesnar would look like, and here we're getting it.
Yeah, like I saw the Cena video too, and I thought, well, I guess when Brock Lesnar's out there, you kind of want him to see an F5, and he's not going to do it to Reigns. Not as easily as before, so let's just throw around the guy who's still outside.
Yeah,
but Jack, the ultimate question: does Brock Lesnar's return to the WWE to confront Roman Reigns and set up an upcoming match, probably at Crown Jewel, does that moment top CM Punk's return?
In my personal opinion, I don't think it does, but I think in the sense of a casual sense, it does for, the casual crowd. That brings a lot of eyes back onto the product.
Interesting. Yes, you're right. Like, not objectively, but there is a giant audience who would react to Lesnar more than the skinny, bearded fella on Friday.
Yeah. But although I will say I saw more media attention and traction to Punk returning than Lesnar, because
very much so.
ESPN and SportsCenter were even posting about Punk's return. It was like everyone was tweeting about it. He was number one for like the rest of the night and carrying on to the next day.
Brock, we just saw a couple of years ago, right? Or 2020?
Yeah, we saw him last year before he left.
Right. So that compared to 7 hardly compares. I have a theory. Because we saw at the end of Money in the Bank, the last time you and I spoke, Roman Reigns' celebration after having beaten...
Edge.
Who did he beat? Edge. Cena came out, right? Like, at the end of the pay-per-view. And we saw a similar setup here. Right after his win, Brock Lesnar comes out, right? Like, it's a weird thing to not do on the TV show. You do it at the end of the pay-per-view. So I want every one of Roman Reigns' matches from here on out to end with him winning, but then being interrupted by his next challenger.
Well, people are speculating next to interrupt him will probably be The Rock.
If it's not like one more person in between, yeah. Can you imagine the CM Punk reaction, the Cena reaction, the Lesnar reaction? I wonder how The Rock reaction would compare, because that's becoming more and more likely as we get closer to the end of the year.
Yeah, and I only welcome it, as we discussed in like previous episodes when they brought up, Reigns has no more challengers. Sure, a belt can elevate that match, but I don't know. I feel like that match can benefit even more from not having a title.
Oh, I see. Interesting.
Because, like, if Reigns has the title, one, we already know he's walking out. He more than likely will walk out no matter what of the match beating The Rock. But, like, him not having the title throws, like, a touch of uncertainty into it,
Yes.
Because it's like, if he has the title, everyone knows for the most part they're not putting the belt on The Rock, because Not even The Rock himself would probably want it because he's probably going to just do the one match and then go film movies.
Yep.
But so before we finish off and get into Takeover,
we have one more match.
Yeah, I want to get back. This match, oh my goodness. I almost want to say it didn't make it worth sticking there the 4 hours, but like, if there was anything that made it worth watching, it was this match. Even my dad enjoyed this match. We just both agreed that not only was it match of the night, but I knew for a fact that it had potential to be on my end of the year list of matches of the year.
Wow.
And I seriously can't throw enough praise at this match because it was the most and best built match on the card. And the thing that like really got me, as you mentioned earlier, was that this match showed just how good they can be, how good they can build up feuds, how good they can build up two characters into a match, how much hype they can build up to it. But yet the rest of this card didn't have that. Like, not even the Reigns Cena match had it, as I mentioned in the last episode, where Cena was barely on TV, so there was barely any hype up leading up to it. But like this match, it had the most build, and you saw that through the theatrics in this match, because you see Edge coming out with his mix of the Brood and Rated R entrance, and then they let him and Rollins go out and have such a great match. They really jam-packed it, well, especially with the spots. They had Edge do that diving spear.
Yeah. I agreed. Having not seen the show, I saw the Edge Brood ring entrance. I think in a packed wrestling weekend like this one, you kind of step back and not just think who had the best match, but who had the best entrance is huge. You know what I mean? And CM Punk's is yet to be beat. But I think one that comes maybe the closest is Edge rising from under the stage around a ring of fire to that funny late 90s Jim Johnson Brood music. Goodness gracious. They didn't try to, remix it or remaster it. No, it sounded like they dusted off a cassette tape from the 90s and popped it in the player.
Yeah, but like I said, I don't have enough praises for it. I consider it match of the night, and more than certainly will probably be, unless some real barn burners go down in the remaining 4 months we have, or
right
now.
And you know what? There might be a contender on the next night of action, NXT Takeover 36.
Yeah, so we get NXT Takeover 36, and you're probably wondering at this point, the listeners are like, so NXT Takeover is getting a full episode, and as you've heard from our opinions in the last one, where we only gave SummerSlam a quick half-episode recap, there's actually a lot more to cover here, and it was a lot easier to get through this show than the other one.
It was a 2.5 hour delight versus the 4 hour slog the night before. But I'll tell you what, Jack, there's one part of the night, I think it's contested amongst the internet wrestling community, that I was not into, and I think you're going to be very surprised.
I think I might know what you're talking about, and I may feel the same way, but obviously get into that later. So the first match we start off with is Cameron Grimes versus LA Knight for the $1 Million Championship.
By the way, I'm still on the hunt for a moment to top CM Punk's return on Friday. We're only 48 hours removed. Let's talk about this $1 Million championship match.
So the moment I heard this, I had to bring it up to you to see if you caught it. But there's a point in the match where LA Knight is knocked out essentially on the stairs, and Cameron Grimes goes and kicks him, and the commentary team reacts, and Beth Phoenix mentions, oh man, he might have knocked his teeth out, he might need to see a dentist, and she goes, I know a good dentist in Knoxville.
I didn't catch that at all.
Yeah, she said it, and I heard
what
it.
What a great line.
I was like, I'll have to bring that up to Mr. Solis for sure.
Wow. No, that's a great callback to Glenn Jacobs, a.k.a. Kane, a.k.a. the mayor of Knox County, Tennessee, a.k.a. Isaac Yankum, DDS.
But so I caught that, and then it was a pretty good match. A new champion in Cameron Grimes finally overcoming LA Knight with the support of Ted DiBiase, not only punching LA Knight, but then putting him in the $1 Million Dream.
DiBiase was great outside. I love the end where he just throws Cameron Grimes the belt to distract the referee so lackadaisically, not like out of aloofness, but just, I'm an old man who can do whatever I want.
But it was a fun back and forth match that, again, like the Rollins match, had tons of build and fan support behind it.
And I thought this match had a ton of moments that you can reflect on and think that was just a great spot, like LA Knight's moonsault off the top rope. Or what I thought was the best cave-in I've ever seen Cameron Grimes do. A picture-perfect cave-in.
Yeah. And I won't spoil what happens tonight on NXT, but I think you'll pretty much laugh at it, and it's a pretty nice payoff to this entire feud. And
yes, please don't, because I'm going to go back and give it a shot watching the weekly TV. But I was into this match. I'm like, yes. Not quite CM Punk level of excitement.
Yeah.
But a lot of people behind Cameron Grimes.
Yeah, very much got a ton of crowd support. And then the next match, the NXT Women's Championship between Raquel Gonzalez versus Dakota Kai.
Her former friend and partner in crime.
The one who introduced us to Raquel has now turned on her and is looking for her shot at the title.
Right.
And depending on who you ask, some people thought there was uncertainty, but if I'm being honest, because of the fact that Dakota Kai was having dark matches on the main roster, I was like, yeah, as much as I think both women are like main roster ready, I think Raquel's retaining here, which she ends up doing.
You know what? I got my wheels turning. You've had Rhea Ripley lose her title. She won at WrestleMania. The night before, you had Bianca Belair lose her title. I wouldn't have thought Raquel Gonzalez was safe. Or, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, this company has shown it has no idea what it's doing with its young champions. We can see Dakota Kai win this.
Yeah.
I love the spots again. Just these moments of, like, Dakota Kai unable to lift Raquel Gonzalez off the floor because she's so big. You know what I mean? Like, really selling the size difference and, like, her inability to, like, really take control of the match.
And then that final spot where she tries to go for that running knee but gets picked up onto Raquel's shoulders, essentially, where she's sitting on the turnbuckle and does that like avalanche power bomb to get the win.
Yes, I think it's interesting that it took an avalanche version of that move to put away Tiny Dakota Kai, but you do what you got to do.
Yeah.
Before we move on, Jack, I want to sort of say something about Raquel Gonzalez here. It's going to sound like I'm going on her about Damian Priest, right? But it's true. She's so boring. She's so uninteresting. For as big as she is and as as athletic as she is, like when they played that package, and she's so unconvincing. And I don't know what it is, but I think I know what it should be. It should be Edge versus Seth Rollins, something you talked at great length about, right? I think you compare the way those guys talk about each other to each other, and you look back at Raquel telling Dakota Kai, I'm going to break you in half. There's something uninspired about that line, because you're not actually going to break her in half. But what I mean? Like, you had Rollins saying, I'm going to kill that man. I'm going to end his career like I should have done 5 years ago. Like, there's a lot more there.
Yeah.
And I think NXT or Triple H or WWE thought there's something also there in the Raquel versus Dakota Kai breakup, but there wasn't. I think this was the best match I've seen Raquel Gonzalez have, but there was something missing in that hype package and in the drama behind it.
Yeah, I agree. I thought it was her best match with the title.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was her best match tied with the tag match her and Dakota had at, I think it was Vengeance Day against Shotzi and Ember for, like, the Dusty Cup Finals.
Oh, yeah.
So it was between those two for what her best overall match was.
And when I say best, I mean the one I enjoyed the most.
Yeah.
Right? I didn't find myself pulling myself out of the moment with my questions and my cynicism, you know?
Yeah.
So, like, you saw Dakota Kai hit her with that Yakuza kick. She falls out the ring. And I don't know, there are moments where, like, yeah, that makes sense. And, oh, bad luck for Dakota Kai. And I never stopped and thought, wow, that was a real lopsided match that went the exact opposite way it should have, EO. Right?
Yeah. And before we move on, again, I want to pivot, save this match for the end. I think.
Okay.
Why.
Got it.
Before we got to the other match, I should have mentioned this when we were discussing it when it happened, but I saw the most funniest thing where, like, this page posted, like, some wrestling fact, right? And it was like, oh, apparently, I don't know how true it is, but apparently Becky Lynch went to clown school for 3 years, apparently, because she thought it would help her, like, in
I think
wrestling.
I've heard that.
Yeah, like, to help her, I guess, with, like, the acting when it came to wrestling in WWE. And
Yeah.
I was like, I wonder how true it is. I clicked the first comment. Yeah, it must have paid off, seeing as what happened on Saturday.
Oh, jeez. Oh, gosh.
I couldn't believe it. Oh, man. But, so, like I said, pivot.
Right. We're going to save the middle match for after we talk about the next two. A short night with very few matches. What's our next match, Jack?
The undisputed finale between Adam Cole and Kyle O'Reilly.
In a 3 stages of hell match. First fall is a straight wrestling match. Second fall, a street fight. Third fall, if it's necessary, steel cage.
Yeah, and I don't know if you feel this way, but I kind of felt disappointed with the stipulation because I was like, this is a rehash of Gargano Cole back in 2019.
Jack, it was a rehash of their match at Takeover in April. The Last Man Standing match.
Yeah. It was
That one was a 3 stages of hell match, too. It was one match, but it had 3 parts. It was just missing the cage.
Yeah. I don't know why, but this match just felt off to me.
Oh, very off. So off, I could not buy into it at all. I was on my phone for the entire match. Missed the first 2 falls.
Yeah, and, like, I guess what, like, truly didn't make me buy into it is kind of like they did a repeat of the Shield where they broke this team up that had been together for so long, and they only did a feud between 2 guys instead of all 4 guys in this case, not the Shield, where the Shield had 3. Whereas, like, you know, when the Shield broke up, Rollins and Ambrose feuded while Reigns was, like, chasing the world title instead of focusing on that. And similarly here, it was mainly between Kyle and Cole. Roderick Strong disappeared, Bobby Fish disappeared before eventually getting released, and it was like, it seems more like a personal rivalry between these two than it really had to do with the Undisputed Era.
Yeah.
And then, like, after their match at Stand and Deliver, it's like, it's hard to convince us that they can take this feud any further. Like, what they should have done was have a straight up match at Stand and Deliver, and then save that match that they had at Stand and Deliver for some place like this, because that convinces more as a feud finisher than a feud starter.
I think, you know, again, being a cynic, you know, and just overthinking things that doesn't have anything to do with us. If I were to posit a guess as to how we got to the 3rd match in this trilogy that no one asked for or that no one needed, I think it has to do with Adam Cole's contract status. You think, in an ideal world, they fight in April to that Last Man Standing match. O'Reilly beats Cole. Cole shows up on Raw, right? But Cole don't want to go to Raw or SmackDown. So he's down in NXT. They don't want to start another, you know, program with anybody else. Let's just keep this Kyle O'Reilly thing going until July. Again, we're unsure of where Cole's going. You going to Raw? You going to SmackDown? Or, God forbid, are we going to let this contract expire, right? So here we go. We got a month left. Again, how could you possibly start another program? That, you know, so you got to run out this O'Reilly business and pretend like it's God's gift to wrestling.
Yeah.
And where are we? We don't know what Cole's status is.
Yeah. All we know is that his contract expires this Friday.
Right.
And from what I've heard, Rampage is being taped after Dynamite, so it's not like he can even show up on that. So if he was heading to AEW, it's like you won't see him until like next week, more than likely.
I mean, I don't think you debut Cole now.
Yeah.
5 days after Punk.
Yeah, and especially because look at how long they've been holding off Daniel Bryan. They're apparently holding him off till like next month, and that's like towards the end of next month.
Right.
So
right, you got to think after All Out. You know, that's a stat card All Out. Goodness gracious,
yeah.
It's got Andrade versus Pac, and Punk versus Darby Allin. I'm in. I'm all in.
But the match had such an odd ending too. Like the spot ending with O'Reilly handcuffed, but getting Cole in the heel hook, and he taps
a one-arm heel hook because LOL. Look how good I am at the graps. You know, like kind of okay. Like yeah, nothing says compelling steel cage match like a submission end.
Yeah, I just, like you said, I really couldn't get into it that much.
And it's a 3 stages of hell match that they finished in like 15 minutes. It's like the first fall happened so quickly. It's like, gosh, well, don't you wish this was a one fall to the finished match? You're like, we'd be done. And I got you. You know how heels are susceptible to pins more so when there's more than one.
Yeah. But probably the last time we've seen of Adam Cole, unless they somehow offer him some mega deal, which with the looks of it and how they've been cutting people with mega deals, I doubt it happens.
Jack, the whole night, as much fun as I've had with NXT TakeOver, the whole night I repeatedly had to hold my mind at bay because I'm a cynical person, Jack. I'm human, and I can't help but think, how am I supposed to even be into this match when at any given notice, they could let one of these people go, right?
Yeah, I brought that up so much to my dad that people are going to have such a hard time getting into NXT because of two things. Why should we get invested if they aren't handled properly on the main roster? And why should we get invested if they could just be released at any point?
It's so funny because I thought, actually, we're the safest we can possibly be because if I can be in the moment, if I can live in the moment, they wouldn't possibly cut somebody mid-show. But that's like the point they've reached where they might as well send Nick Khan out to the ring to tell, O'Reilly, oh, we cut you.
Yeah, and
ring the bell.
This is like a tangent for another time, but like I brought up to my dad, I'm like, look at how Riddle and Damian Priest and Bianca Belair have all been handled on the main roster. And
well, two of them are title holders now.
Yeah, and similar to what I said about, Edge and Rollins, it's like, how can everything not be exactly like that?
Edge and Rollins.
Yeah, like how can they, like, not that they have to be the same, but why can't every NXT call-up be as successful?
But there's a level of care and thoughtfulness and deliberate decision making on Edge and Rollins' part, right?
Yeah.
And I gotta think it has a lot to do with Edge, who's ready to say, that's bad, this is good, we're gonna do this.
Yeah, and he's able to do that because of how long he's been in the business. I saw people saying, oh, if Bianca didn't like, losing in 25 seconds to Becky, why didn't she, tell him no, she didn't want to do it? How is someone who's only been on the main roster for a year at this point supposed to tell the big boss, yeah, no, I don't want to do that?
Tell him, what are you going to do? Got you too? I mean, there's greener pastures. That's what we all have learned in the last year.
Yeah.
But you got to say, no, don't they? And how interesting is it that Becky also didn't say, it might have even been her idea. Somebody needed to say, did y'all see AEW last night? I think Becky comes out, tells everyone she misses her, and then go, Darby Allin, Bianca Belair. You got something I want. I'm trying to do an Irish accent. Let's see, Irish. That's cracking.
But
hey, speaking of misused on the main roster, we got another match.
yes, our main event.
Our main event is soon to be misused on the main roster versus previously misused on the main roster.
Yeah, you got Challenger Samoa Joe against NXT Champion Karrion Kross. Except if you're watching Monday nights, you wouldn't have known that because of the fact that first, like, it's the fact that they don't understand how much first impressions matter. Ever since he lost to Hardy, the CWC has not stopped chanting Hardy at that man.
Yeah.
But so it's like, and then like everything they've done after, it's just like they've tried to, help him out by giving him wins, against Ricochet, Keith Lee, and people still show they don't care because it's like, look what you did to start him off for us. How should we care about it anymore?
So thankfully I care about Joe, and I thought it was great in the back when William Regal tried to demonstrate an air of unbiasedness and professionalism in his role as general manager, but said, I hope you kick his ass.
Yeah.
It was incredible.
And, it was a decent match for what it was. I pretty much knew, everyone almost knew that Kross was dropping the title, which it was surprising only in the sense that, with recent news that apparently Vince McMahon doesn't want, like, old people down in NXT and wants them to go back to being, like, true developmental.
I don't think Samoa Joe's a young chicken, you know what I mean?
Yeah. I will say, the one thing that got me, Joe wins the match, and the one thing that got me, he was using the Muscle Buster.
Yes, yes.
I told my dad, I can't be for sure certain, but I'm pretty sure it's been years since I last saw him use that move. He's always used the Coquina Clutch on the main roster, and essentially since, that Tyson Kidd injury happened.
Right.
So when I saw him bust it out, when I saw Kross sitting on that top rope, I was like, it's going to happen. It's going to happen, isn't it?
Here we go, Jack. Is Joe using the Muscle Buster a bigger moment in wrestling history than CM Punk's return?
Nope.
Nope. Even though it might be, close to like more than a few years, but nope.
Yeah, but still good. And
what do you think of Karrion Kross's new executioner gimmick on Raw?
I saw the mask, I saw the gimmick stuff that they had, and I'm like, man, they're really trying to go all out to, like, recover.
Something like that. Like, it's so funny how it's almost worse than no attention.
Yeah.
It's almost worse than we don't have anything for you, but it's I have something for you. It's a leather mask and straps.
Yeah,
And, you said it that this match wasn't, too spectacular. And I honestly think that has a lot to do with Kross, actually. I heard people say that he was the worst part of that 5-man championship match, and that, he can really only wrestle one certain way, and it isn't too exciting, and he is a lot of bells and whistles, isn't he? Bells and whistles and Scarlet.
Yeah, when people are chanting for your manager more than yourself, that says something.
I'm just saying, so
and then,
best of luck to him amongst the big lads. He's a big lad, so, we'll see how he fares.
Yeah, I think he'll probably shine most when he's, like, going against guys his similar size rather than, a lot of the work rate guys who essentially, quote-unquote, expose him like people were saying.
Very biased wording you got there, Jack.
But so another thing also is that they mentioned all night that a new era begins, and if we have enough time to get into that, we could, but it's about 16 minutes remaining.
I think we've got to dedicate that to the last match that we haven't spoken about.
Yes. So if you remember last year, end of year, honestly, looking back, it could have been my number one, but again, I just had too much I had too much connection to that Lee Dijakovic match at Portland, but I hyped up so much that Walter Ilya match. And the moment they announced Ilya Dragunov versus Walter Part 2, and then they announced it was happening here in the States, it was the one thing that I knew. I knew it couldn't be better than it, but I knew it would, in my opinion, be close to or on par to it. It was the only match that I knew would be close to CM Punk's debut. Now, the Edge Rollins match exceeded my expectations, really good, you know. But everything good I had to say about that, times it by 100, because my goodness, this match just blew me away.
Me as well, for not even having seen the first one. I know, an absolute travesty, because you and your dad habitually reminded me to sit down and watch Ilya versus Walter, the first one.
Yeah, like...
And I wonder, from your perspective, Jack, which was better, the first match or this one on Sunday?
Honestly, I might have to say this one, even if that might be a bit recency bias. There was just so much in it. Like, the beginning part of it, like the first, 10-15 minutes of it were very different than the first one, because it was more technical. You know, they were doing all these, submissions and limb work. And what I loved about it most was, they showed, they kind of teased it, oh, it's going to be a different match than the first one. But then slowly but surely, it dissolves back into that first match and dissolves into a just straight-out brawl.
I love that Walter has two chops, one more devastating than the other. If he catches you with the backhand, it's almost certainly done. But he's got that forward chop or a slap to the face that he could go to that isn't a real match ender, but it just sounds and looks so devastating. And Ilya is so pale, he was showing all of the evidence of those connections.
Yeah, and Ilya got cut open by Strong on the last episode of NXT, so he had that bandage, and that came off real quick. So the entire time I was thinking, man, is that gonna play a factor? Is Walter gonna start targeting that? Are they gonna let these guys have blood this time? And
this is a tiny thing. But I noticed when he came out that Ilya Dragunov did not have his trademark red contacts in his eyes. He had his God-given eyes, as if to say, no, I'm coming into this one, no fooling around. I'm in it to win it, you know what I mean? Where it's opposed to, his more fun and eccentric kind of side.
Yeah, and he didn't even do, a lot of his opening, entrance stuff, too. He was just completely focused. And going back to, you said the match-ending stuff, the one thing I brought up to my dad, because there were so many points, as you'll see through this match, where you could have thought it was the ending. The one thing I love about Walter... And what Walter does reminds me a lot of what Jonathan Gresham is doing out in ROH, is he's finding a new way to end all of his matches each time. When he won the title from Dunn, he did it with the splash. When he beat Tyler Bate in Cardiff, it was with the clothesline.
Right.
And then when he beat Ilya the first time, it was by making him pass out. So it's each and every time Walter has a match, he also has had other opponents as well, but each and every time he's had these matches throughout NXT UK and here on NXT, again, also with Ciampa ending him with a chop, he's found a way to make each ending different, so that you aren't used to the normal style of, oh, he hit the big move, so that's the ending of it. Or it gives away that that's the end of the match.
I got to call back to LA Knight in the first match of this show, because when you've got all those near falls in the Ilya Walter match, right? I think the both of them do something better than a lot of people do, which is the reaction to the 2 count, So many people sell it wrong. They're spooked, they're scared. But I saw it in Ilya's face, Walter's face, and then I have to call out LA Knight, because they all had the same face, which I thought was more apropos, which was, what do I gotta do? You know what I mean? That didn't work. And it's not you're possessed or something, like the Undertaker kind of reaction. It's honestly I can't think of anything else to throw at this guy.
Yeah. And in my notes, just describing this whole match, I had to call back to Pat McAfee the night before, when I believe it was when Edge hit that spear to the outside on Rollins. Pat McAfee goes, "Holy words I can't say because of Peacock," right? And that
funny Pat McAfee.
And that was my thinking with this match. It was I couldn't believe the brutality of this match, how like it found a way to be like methodic, but also very fast paced at the same time, where they weren't like slowing down a lot of parts. And like I said, there was so many false finishes. And there's a lot of matches where false finishes kind of hurt it, like a lot of kickouts and stuff. Like it might hurt the believability, but it was like in this match, every single like false finish was there to like hook you and keep you invested. Especially because knowing the previous matches that Ilya's been in, it's like his whole thing is essentially almost that like the more he goes on, the more like crazy he gets.
Yes, and you know what helps me buy those false finishes that again, you know, is lacking in other matches, right? I see Ilya kick out of a splash. And you're thinking, how on earth does that make sense? But then he lifts Walter. Then he suplexes Walter. He throws 295 pounds over his head after everything he's been through. And you're like, this guy might win it.
Yeah, and win it he does. And in the most shocking way of all time. Like, the amount of shock this gave me was like close to the amount of shock CM Punk's return gave me, because he makes Walter tap. I was like, if he was going to submit Walter, I thought Walter was going to pass out or Walter was going to give him a pinfall. No, Walter does the best thing he can to put over Ilya.
Yes.
He not only fights out of this submission twice, but when Ilya gets him in it for the third time, and the other two times they were on the floor, making him want to pass out. He gets him standing up, choking out Walter, and immediately as he gets him standing up, Walter taps out for Ilya.
My first immediate thought, it's all headcanon. Walter may come out and say this later, but I saw him tap, and it's not a painful move, right? The sleeper. But what I thought and wondered was, I wonder if he tapped right away because he knew he was going to pass out. And there's an immense amount of shame with passing out versus being able to at least roll out on your own will and walk out with your head held sort of high.
Especially because Walter's thing, you know, is keeping the mat sacred, you know,
right.
The whole thing. So I could see that as well. But yeah, that completely shocked me when I was like, wow. They made,
you know what I like it too? Like when he's on the ground, Ilya drops him, he's all emotional, and Walter covers his face, right? You know, he's not like passed out or cringing in pain. He's covering his face as if in shame of the defeat.
Yeah, and I couldn't believe this match, and you know, it was just such a good match. I had expectations going in, and they somehow found a way to blow them out the water again. And
yes,
it was funny because before the match was starting, they were making their entrances, you know, and my dad goes, so if Walter retains, what do you think happens, right? And we start thinking of potential scenarios, and my dad's like, well, since there's barely anyone in the UK, because what he's heard from me, he's like, maybe he brings it to the US to defend it, you know, or at least comes to the US to get opponents, but brings them back to the UK to have the matches to get more eyes on UK. And my dad's like, you know, maybe he can have a match with McIntyre, Sheamus, Cesaro. You know, I was listening to those opponents, like, yeah, those can make sense, especially because it's European guys if you want to stick to the UK air. And then my dad made me sad before this match. Luckily, they cheered on my mood, but my dad made me sad, and I'm going to kind of make you sad. Because he says, oh yeah, he could also defend it against Balor. And then it made me realize, Balor never had that match before he left NXT.
Oh, I did the math. I had all the emotions in a single second. COVID robbed me of a Walter versus Balor match. Also, like, lethargy around the NXT UK show in general. But, oh man, you're absolutely right. Sad, isn't it? But I forgot. I just forgot. Goodness gracious.
Yeah, it was like, I was thinking of those matches. I'm like, man, this would be... Balor wasn't even coming to my mind. And then when my dad said it, my heart, like, instantly dropped. I'm like, we never got that match. We never got that match.
Wait a minute, Balor.
It seemed like Walter may be, like, at least, you know, being a a rare occurrence for like the US.
Because now that he has the responsibility of the championship off his giant shoulders, there's a lot of directions he can go.
Yeah, and so here's just to hoping that once the world opens up, if NXT's still around and they do take over Dublin, fly both those men out there and get it done as quickly as possible before it's robbed from us again.
I had one more thought about the end of the match because I thought the submission was interesting. I think it was a much better fit for this match than the O'Reilly-Cole match. But, like, the choke, you know what I mean? Or the sleeper, right? The depravity of oxygen to Walter. Like, just as, like, a really poetic reminder that this beast, this mythical legend of Walter, he's just a man. You know what I mean? Like, you take the oxygen away from him, and he's just as mortal as any of us. And I thought that was an interesting end to that match.
Yeah, I absolutely loved it. I'm glad Ilya gets his shine and Walter put him over like that.
The new czar of NXT UK.
Yeah, amazing.
But, Jack, does it top the CM Punk return in Chicago on Friday?
I will sadly have to say it does not.
It does not. How could you compare the buildup of 10 months versus 84?
Yeah. What a week in wrestling. Ignoring all the negative of SummerSlam.
Yep.
What a week of wrestling it was, and what a bright future wrestling has. Because I don't know if you saw this, but SummerSlam was apparently their highest grossing SummerSlam of all time.
Wow.
The Punk segment got AEW's Rampage show on a time slot that was essentially starting at 10 p.m. like East Coast, 7 on the West, and all the times in between. He got them 1.3 million on what is considering
1.3 million people, Jack, on a basic cable TV network in the middle of the Friday night.
Yeah, and now you can only imagine what All Out's gonna do when people pay for it. Because I saw so many people saying CM Punk's really gonna make me pay for a pay-per-view for the first time in years.
Yes, these are people who have been holding out, going, there isn't anything on that card for me. They're coming back.
Yeah, it's a completely bright future.
Mm-hmm.
And I'll say this I saw someone make this joke, and but I want to kind of use it in a more positive. Like, someone compared WWE when they heard the SummerSlam numbers. They compared WWE to McDonald's because they were saying how the quality wasn't that good, but you still expect WWE to make that money, despite the quality. And, the one thing I'll say about that is, well, you kind of get what you expect,
Uh-huh.
As we know, WWE is more focused on sports entertainment, so it's like, if you're going there expecting, like, professional wrestling like the other places market, then of course you're not going to be happy. And, I finish off with this because, as we've shown through AEW Rampage, SummerSlam, and NXT TakeOver, there's something out there for everyone, and there's even more than these three places. And as we talked about the Bronson Reed thing, I think before on this podcast, right. I forgot, there's so many options for anybody to go to. Not only just the wrestlers, but fans as well.
It's true. And I'm excited to be going to my first PWG show in September. It's going to have Malachi Black on it, man.
Yeah.
And Davey Richards fighting Bandito for the PWG Championship. Tell you what, Jack, the last couple of months of WWE inconsistencies has got me looking to greener pastures. And it's a good time to be a wrestling fan.
It definitely is, sir. I'm super excited for the future. And, like I said during the Rollins Edge thing, if they can continue to do it like that, they can as well continue to grow. I'm always going to have that positive outlook and hope the best. I'm not going to be like other fans and just hope for the demise of WWE.
What are we going to do, Jack, without the hashtag CM Punk to AEW confirm jokes? Like, what are we going to say when I want to be insincere and trolly?
I'll close out here. I just saw about 20 seconds left. Thank you all for joining us for another episode of the Rule 34 podcast. I don't think I'm going to be able to get an intro in, so I'll just finish it off by saying, as always, if it exists, we have an opinion on it. Thank you, and we'll see you all in the next episode.